Hi, I'm Brian Lawrence of the Rutherford County Government, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of the Rutherford County Magazine. First, we'll visit the new Smyrna Clerk's office to find out exactly what that new office will offer the residents in northern Rutherford County. Next, we'll talk to some students at McFadden Elementary who recently got a chance to visit the Rutherford County Courthouse to see exactly how local government operates. And our last topic will take us to the Lane Agri-Park, where we'll talk to some of the pros at the UT TSU Extension Office about some summer gardening tips that could keep your lawn and garden looking top-notch. So sit back and enjoy this edition of the Rutherford County Magazine. Recently, the Rutherford County government built a new county office building in Smyrna that contains two very important county offices that the public can really use.
Those offices include the Smyrna Clerk's office, which moved from its old location on Lowry Street, and a new satellite location of the trustee's office. In May, the Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce performed a ribbon-cutting ceremony to formally open the new Smyrna Clerk's office for business. With this new location now open, it should be even more convenient for people to use due to the fact that the emissions testing center is right next door. But what most people who use the Smyrna Clerk's office want to know is what kind of services will this office provide versus the old one or the main office in Murfreesboro.
Well, of course, they can apply for titles and renew their tags, and they can get temporary tags there, handicap tags. They can also apply for passports, notary, and marriage license. Plus, they can get married there. If they decide they want to get married there, they can go there to get married. They can go right through the emissions station and just turn to their left, come up the road, and there they are right at our office. We're before you get to the emissions station. Weekly Road runs right in front of our office. The address is actually 205 I Street, but if you know where the emission station is, you see our office right before you get there. And if you come in the office and you forgot to get your emissions, I mean, it's very easy for you to go drive out there and get it and come back in without having to go across town. We're doing basically the same thing at the satellite office for the services in this office, but we have added 2 new stations for the county trustee. So next year, they'll be able to go there to pay their property tax, which will help a lot for people that live in Smyrna and Laverne.
We were able to put in a satellite location at a very minimal additional cost to the county because the building was here, the restroom facilities are here. There's already a courier that takes information between Murfreesboro and Smyrna for the clerk's office that we'll be able to use. So we were able to add convenience without adding a great deal of cost to our budget. We'll be able to take property tax payments here. We'll also be able to do the tax freeze and tax relief applications for our seniors and for our disabled homeowners and our disabled veterans. This office will be staffed on a part-time basis, at least beginning. We'll begin in July of 2010 to take tax freeze and tax relief applications, and then during tax season, we'll have regular part-time hours in this location. But if you need full-time assistance, we're 8 to 4:30 Monday through Friday in Murfreesboro, and we'll have posted hours here in Smyrna. And in those very busy times, as we get toward tax deadlines, we'll have some extended hours here. But it will be a part-time location, but it will be full service.
Even people that work in Nashville that live in Murfreesboro, and they try to get here before this office closes, this is going to be more convenient for them to go there because they can go on through emissions and then come back to the clerk's office and go through our drive-through. We have a very nice drive-through now, and it'll be very convenient for them.
Okay, that was a great topic on the new Smyrna Clerk's office. Now let's move on to our next topic, which is about education, particularly government education.
Recently, some students and teachers from McFadden Elementary came to the Rutherford County Courthouse to see how the local government works. County Mayor Ernest Burgess talked to the students about how the local government functions and how decisions are made that affect their community. With this interaction, teachers hope that students will have a better understanding of how the government works and what they can do to be a part of it.
Well, we've been involved in a unit on government. We've learned the 3 branches of government, and most importantly, the responsibilities of citizens in government. So we thought it would be perfect to come down here and have a hands-on session with the mayor and see actually how the voting process occurs, because students, they know what's best in their community and they do have concerns, but they don't know how that's enacted. So it was really good for them to see that process, and I'm sure some of them will leave today and want to become active in their government.
Well, for children, learning about government is important because, like, if you ever want to grow up and maybe be like working government, then you'll have to know about it.
It's important to like vote for your leaders, and it's important to follow all the laws or else you could get taken to jail, and you don't want to pay a big fine that costs a lot of dollars.
I think that everybody in my classroom has an idea of what would make our school better and what would make our community better. And I think after seeing this today, they will understand what it takes to get the process in motion.
Sometimes if you're concerned about something in your community, you can tell like your mayor or something, and maybe he can like make a law or something.
Well, one thing that is very difficult, because as a child you know you have feelings and concerns, but you don't understand point of view. And that's one of the things that was so great today, is to hear the point of view from different people and see how it actually ends up translating into something like a law. It's one thing to read it out of a textbook, and so many times it's dry and boring, not really understandable, especially now because we compare national government to state government to local government. So to actually come to a place and get to actually talk to a mayor was wonderful.
Learning about government, whether it's local or national, is very important for all of us. All right, let's move on to our last topic, which involves getting your hands a little dirty. Recently, we visited the Rutherford County Extension Office and had some of the experts there talk to us about a few lawn and garden tips.
First, we talked to Mitchell Moat about identifying and removing all those nasty weeds from our lawn.
Well, you know, a question we often get here at the Extension Office is, as it relates to lawn care, to home turf care and so on, is how do I control these weeds that are here in my lawn? And there are a lot of things that you can do to control weeds, but probably one of the first things that a homeowner, anybody maintaining their own turf, needs to do is kind of at least identify what kind of weed they have in terms of categories of weeds. And basically, weeds fall into 2 categories botanically. You have broadleaf weeds. And here's an example of a broadleaf weed. It's a dandelion. Here's another example of a broadleaf weed, something known as broadleaf plantain. And broadleaf weeds generally are going to have leaves that are wider than they are long, and they're called broadleaf. And the veins sometimes run, not necessarily parallel, but semi-parallel or obliquely down the leaf blade. And then when you look at a grass weed, that's the second type botanically, then a grass blade or a grass weed is a kind of grass. And grasses have blades that are generally longer than they are wide, and they have veins in them that run parallel to the leaf blade. So here's an example of a summertime grass weed, which is just common crabgrass. So identifying whether it's a grassy weed or a broadleaf weed is probably one of the first steps in terms of getting a good handle on how to control those things. Now there is a third category of weed that sometimes can be confused with grasses, and it's known as a sedge. Okay, and the primary sedge that we have around here is something called nut sedge. If we can walk right over here, we'll take a look at some nut sedge and show you what the difference is between it and also between it and the grasses. But nut sedge is one that people will often mistake for a grass, because it has some of those same characteristics that a grass has. From the standpoint, it has blades that are much longer than they are wide, just like a grass has. But it's not a grass and it's not a broadleaf, it's a sedge. And the sedges, especially the nut sedges, have very glossy, shiny leaf tissue. They're not hairy, okay? They don't have any hairs on the leaf at all. And they have a really sharp mid-vein that comes down the center of this thing. It almost folds the leaf almost in half. And you flip it on the back side of it and it's a distinct ridge where that mid-vein goes down. And the blades on this nut sedge come out in groups of 3 from the base of it. And you think, well, okay, so what's the big deal? It's either a sedge or a grass, so what difference does it make? Well, the difference is if you're trying to control nut sedge with a herbicide and you're using a grass material on it, it's not going to have any impact at all. You're going to be awfully frustrated, and you're going to think, well, the stuff doesn't work like it's supposed to, and so on and so on. And you'll spend your time and you'll spend your money and not get any results from it simply because you misidentified it. So from that standpoint, you know, we go back to those 3 types of weeds. We have a grassy weed, an example of the crabgrass, and here is the broadleaf plantain, a broadleaf weed, and then a nut sedge, and that's an example of a sedge, okay? So once you can identify at least what category they fall into, that's probably the main thing that you need to do to help be able to control those. Now, you think about controlling weeds, probably the very best, and we're talking about a turf, a home lawn setting, probably the absolute best defense is a good, dense stand of turf grass. 2 plants can't occupy the same place at the same time. And if you have all or most of your ground covered up in desirable plants, there's no room there for undesirable plants, like these weeds. So that's the first thing. You want to manage your turf grass to the best of your ability. Now, one way that you always have of controlling weeds is to physically remove them. If you dig those weeds up out of the ground and you get enough root and so on, then you've done a good job and that weed's dead. That one will never bother you again. On this dandelion, look at that long root there. That's a long root. It's kind of a tap root. And we look over here at this broadleaf plantain, this one right here, and see the difference in them. The plantain has a fibrous root, whereas the dandelion has this fleshy tap root. And the point of that is, let's say you're going to hand pull this dandelion. If you pop the top off that, which is very easy to do when you're pulling out of the ground, and you leave that much root in the ground, then that dandelion will regenerate itself from that root and come back. And so you've got some pretty good exercise out in the sun by pulling the tops off of it. You hadn't done a whole lot as far as controlling that weed, because it will come back. So if you're going to pull those weeds or physically remove them, whether you're hand pulling or using a mechanical weeding device or whatever, you want to get just as much root as possible. And it's easier to do with the fibrous roots than it is with the tap roots. So if hand pulling is not necessarily going to be the best option, if you've got so much weed pressure that you can't pull them all up, then you look at using a post-emergent herbicide. And that a post-emergent just means that it's applied post or after the weed is already up and growing. And there are a lot of products that are out there designed for homeowners that show an awful lot of efficacy against a broad spectrum of those broadleaf weeds. And what you're primarily looking for is something that's called a selective herbicide. And by selective, what I mean by that is it'll select and have activity against these broadleaf weeds like the plantain and like the dandelion, but it won't harm the desirable turf grass. So it selects for the weed, but does not have any harmful activity against the desirable turf grass. So it's called a selective herbicide. And there are a lot of different brands and products out there available. But one thing they all have in common is they use a very similar mix of active ingredients or actual chemicals to do the work. And if a homeowner or anybody that's looking for, a good product to go in and control broadleaf weeds in their turf grass, I suggest they look for a product that has 2 or more active ingredients in it. And you'll see a long list of potential active ingredients, things such as 2,4-D, another material called MCPP, another one called MCPA. You'll see things like dicamba and so on. And a combination of those products, okay, 2 or more of those, tends to do a better job of controlling a broader spectrum of weeds.
Okay, now we know a little bit more about making a lawn look nicer. Let's find out about what kind of garden we can plant for the summer.
Hi, my name is Anthony Tugg. I'm the Extension Agent County Director of the Rutherford County Extension Program. We are here today in our demonstration garden where actually our 4-H'ers in the county are actually growing different types of vegetables. And these vegetables can be grown in any home garden. For a lot of homeowners, over the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen a big interest in growing fresh home vegetables, and a lot of people have called in and want to know for the first time what can they grow, how can they get started growing. One of the first things I like to talk to people about when first getting started, make sure you select a good site where you can actually have good sunlight. Gardens typically need anywhere from 6 to 8 hours sunlight per day, and after that we can actually work the beds and actually get plants into the garden where they can actually grow well. And secondly, what you want to do is basically have a soil test. Find out what nutrients are available in the soil, and we can do soil tests here at the Rutherford County Extension Office. Then you'll get the results back on your pH, and also will tell you how much nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium you have available in your soil, so that way we can basically know how to fertilize your garden. But some of the things we can actually grow in our area here are some of the common vegetables we have. We can actually grow a lot of different types of beans. Beans are real common type of vegetable that we actually grow. We can grow bush type beans, purple hub peas for some of the types of beans and different things like that. But one of the most common vegetables we grow a lot of, and the most common vegetable that's grown in most gardens throughout the United States are tomato plants. And there are a lot of different types of tomato we can actually grow in a lot of different varieties we can actually grow in. And one other thing, when you're thinking about growing tomatoes or some of the other crops like cucumber, something we like to do is basically have those plants staked up. And what we decide to do here is something we can use over and over again. We decide to use livestock panels and have our tomatoes actually tied to these livestock panels. We just basically use a little small simple string, and basically as the plant continues to grow up, we'll continue to tie those up versus some of those poles or other type of stakes. We can use these over and over, and we're not worried about them breaking. The purpose of having some type of trellis is very important to get good air circulation in the plants, because as these plants continue to grow and they get more and more foliage on them, they will have a tendency to shade the plant out. And by having them staked and keeping them from laying on the ground, you'll reduce some of the disease pressures and things like that. But it also gives good air circulation throughout the plant, where you can also, by doing that, you'll reduce your insect and disease population, so you won't have to spray the plants as often. So this type of trellis or some other type of staking mechanism would be great for tomatoes and also for cucumbers, and we do as well. And we'll look at the same thing on the other side in a minute. Another real popular plant is basically we grow a lot of, and it's very easy to grow, are peppers. Whether they're bell pepper, jalapeno peppers, you name it, you can actually grow them very easily here in the Middle Tennessee area. So we do a lot of those. So those are real common. Another vegetable that's grown a lot in the South that's very easily to grow and very common are squash. Can be actually grown very easily. Cucumbers. Another favorite a lot of people like is fried okra. Okra is one that grows really well. Kind of a caution for growing okra, they produce a lot. So I wouldn't put a lot of plants out when growing okra. What you want to do really is basically put a few plants out, because they will produce a lot throughout the summer time frame. But we could just kind of move over here. We kind of see that same trellis that we actually have for some other plants as well. And we kind of walk through, we can see different types of beans and some other things that are planted. We also have some other crops out here as well that's real common, that easily to grow. Down on this end, basically you can kind of see we got some cucumbers planted, and basically what they're going to do is, once the cucumber plants come up, what they're going to do is we're going to tie those to this trellis as well. And basically then we'll kind of avoid, once they get mature and big enough, we won't have to reach to the ground and pick those up. We can actually pick them off the trellis. And that's another good thing about a good, strong, steady trellis. Basically it won't break and bend once they get a good crop on those. So a good trellis is very important. Again, same purpose, to reduce the insect and disease by having good air circulation to move throughout those plants. I think another favorite besides the top tomatoes, peppers, squash, and cucumber and okra, another favorite that a lot of people like to grow and do quite well with are watermelons. Basically you can kind of see we have a couple of things of watermelon that you want to actually grow. and produce. We do want to keep in mind if you're basically growing watermelon or any of the cucurbic crops. When I think cucurbics, we're talking about watermelon, pumpkins, and things like that. They need a lot of space to run. Because basically they're going to put out long runners and they're going to take up a lot of space. So it's not real ideal to actually have those cucurbic crops in a small area where you don't have room to run, where they won't have room to run and take over a certain, because they will grow into your peppers or squash and other types of things like that also. So that's a good way to do that. And also we think about cucumbers, they would kind of run and take over space as well. That's kind of why we put them up on a trailer so we can be easily mobile that way. But as the trend continues for people to grow fresh home vegetables in their home gardens, we provide a lot of service for helping them with site selection, helping with getting a good soil test, as well as problem solving. And one thing you may notice out here as well, once a week we do come out on a regular basis and they remove different types of weeds. What weeds actually, we can do them hand pull weeds out, or you can get a hoe or something like that to remove the weeds. The good thing about removing the weeds from around the plant is basically that these weeds, as you continue to water and fertilize these plants through the growing season, they will have a tendency to compete for those same nutrients that the plants need. So weed control is very important. So you want to make sure you remove those weeds and other type of problems as well. Because a lot of times, not only weeds competing for those nutrients, they are also can basically be a place to store insects, come and feed on those plants, and basically infect your plants that way. So that's kind of some of the trends that we're seeing and some of the things that we're seeing in our garden. But again, if they need any help with any of these services, they are welcome to call us at the Rutherford County Extension Office at 615-898-7710.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Rutherford County Magazine. I'd like to thank everybody who is part of this edition, and I'd also like to thank you, the viewer, for tuning in and joining us. If you'd like to learn more about the Rutherford County government, please visit us online at www.rutherfordcountytn.gov. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you here next time on the Rutherford County Magazine.